When I was in college, I went to see a play by the Bread and Puppet Theater, and it completely blew my mind. It was so, so beautiful. It was all puppets that were manipulated by people on the stage. I remember there was this one scene that I thought was so sublime. It was like an image of the ocean, and it was just like two little sticks with a cardboard cutout of like waves, like a kid would draw, hanging from a string. And one of the people took the puppet and took the two hands of the puppet and put the two hands on the ocean image. And it made the ocean image move because it was on a string, and it moved left and right like waves. And the person was like washing their face in the ocean. And I just thought this was so great. And I wrote a letter to Peter Schumann, who was the director of the theater company. And I said, I want to make a film about you and the puppet company. And he wrote back to me and said, a lot of people have asked me if they can make films about me, and I always say no, always. But there was something about your letter that really touched me, and I'm open to the idea. And if you want to come visit me in Vermont, we can talk about it. So I was pretty excited, and I drove to Vermont with my friends, and we stayed at his place, and he showed us all of his puppets and all of his stuff, and he was great. And I met his kids and his wife, and he said he was going to be in New York, and I could film his rehearsals for his next production. And I said, great. And so I go to New York to film his rehearsals for this play, and it's beautiful. What he's doing is incredible. And my idea was that I would do stop-start motion, like animation, and I would just film this frame by frame. And, I was a big stoner at the time, so I wanted to get stoned before I did it. And when I get stoned, I can't remember things as well. And I was doing this very complicated kind of structuralist animation thing where I had a certain number of frames, but it alternated. It was like 4 frames and 5 frames and 4 frames and 6 frames and 4 frames and 7 frames. And I kept forgetting how many frames I had done. So none of the structure was working at all. It was all just completely random. And then at a certain point, I was clicking on the frame thing so much that I broke it. So I couldn't use the frame clicker that was extended outwards so you wouldn't move the camera. So I had to do it on the camera itself, but I kept moving the camera every time I did that because it was hard to click it without moving the camera. So it wasn't a still image anymore, and it was just really embarrassing, and I just completely fucked up. And I was so embarrassed by what I had done. And I was directing them. I was saying, everybody stop. And I would take a frame, and I'd say, okay, everybody stop. And I would take a frame. They spent hours trying to accommodate my stoned whim. And when I saw the footage, it was bad. I didn't even want to show it to him. And he asked me if he could see it. And I said, nah, it's really not worth looking at. It's not good. And then I visited him one more time in Vermont, and we talked a lot about whether to pursue this or not. And I remember I had no cash to get back to New Haven. And I asked him if he could give me some cash and I could write him a check. And he said, okay, sure. So he wrote me a check for, I think it was for $50. And, back then that was worth $200 now. And, I didn't have enough money in my bank account. I didn't know this, but I didn't. And the check bounced. And I don't know, I was just young and irresponsible back then. And I never dealt with it. I never paid him back the money I owed him. And, it was eventually decided that we would drop the film project. And I remember I showed him a poem I'd written. And he said, you obviously have something to say. You should just say what you have to say. You don't have to make a film about my theater company. And I was like, oh, he's right. I guess I do have something to say. And I think I just sort of changed course after that and just tried to figure out what that was and how to say it.